So we're back again. This is going to be my first book review for the channel, and I wanted to highlight a really good book I guess I've read recently that has gotten me thinking. Of course, with all this, the American political dysfunction that we are dealing with now in life. My parents, for my birthday, got me this really, really good book by David R. Palmer. I found out he is the former superintendent of West Point. He's I believe, a brigadier general, and he wrote a book called George Washington and Benedict Arnold: A Tale of Two Patriots. Now, if you're an American, you know anything about history, I'm sure you've been heard. Don't be a Benedict Arnold. Don't be a traitor. Don't be a someone with no morals or no scruples or whatever. But this book was really good in finally giving me a little bit of a biography of Benedict Arnold, why he would make some of those decisions, because essentially he was one of the richest men in the colonies back in the day before he made this move. And the book takes its time to go through like the slights that he took, because the Continental Congress was starting out is basically just a lot of rich dudes jockeying for power, trying to control this nation. I mean, for instance, they're trying to take away George Washington's commandship of what's going on, because they don't like everything he's doing when he does it. And he's not seeking certain approvals from them before he does things. And he's like, I'm a general in the freaking field. I'm having to make split second decisions. I can't run everything by Congress. I need some latitude. And Benedict Arnold becomes one of George Washington's most trusted advisors, and somebody he's trying to move up in the army, the Continental Army, because he shows bravery. I mean, I didn't realize how brave Benedict Arnold was. I mean, he charged into certain death numerous times. He was known by the British. The British actually knew as like the crazy man out there that against all odds could lead and inspire his men to do these charges and battle movements that the British were just like, surely this ragtag army won't be held together unless it was held together by his forceful personality, which Benedict Arnold was. This is a really good book. It's all I can really say about it. I would seek it out if you have any interest in American history, because I had always had just the basic notion of just Benedict Arnold traded our country out for money, and that was it. And it really wasn't that. It was a lot more to it. A lot of slights. For instance, they talk about how George Washington sent a personal letter trying to get Benedict Arnold promotions, and they would literally promote some of these 60, 70-year-old men who couldn't even get on a horse to go into battle because, well, they donated a lot, or well, they're the preeminent, they're from the preeminent family of New Hampshire or South Carolina or whatever. But like, it wasn't a meritocracy. And the book does a really good job of showing that George Washington was thwarted a lot in what he wanted to get done, but he never lost his composure. He never lost sight of the end goal. Whereas a lot of people, especially Benedict Arnold, got so freaking frustrated with this young nation that he was like, basically, screw y'all. If y'all gonna say screw me, screw you guys first. And it's through divine providence that he was able to be found out, because not to give too much away, but Benedict Arnold was about to have given the secrets to the British to attack West Point, which was unbelievably strategic value, being on the Hudson River. They would be able to control, as they already did control New York City, but then if they could control in the interior of the land, they'd effectively split the colonies in half. Which, if you know anything about the Civil War, that's precisely what happened whenever they, the Battle of Vicksburg and Shiloh, they take over the Mississippi River, effectively cutting the Confederacy in half. You got the blockade down there in the Gulf and along the coast, and it seals off the Confederacy to eventually they're going to lose. Well, that was, 50 years before, 6 years before, that was the British's idea too. We can cut these colonies in half, and then eventually they'll sue for peace. And they used their contacts to get to Benedict Arnold and let him know, like, doesn't it suck that you're being treated this way, that you've lost a fortune? For instance, I read in here that he actually funded some of these with his own money, some of these early military campaigns with his own money. And then when he gets back to Congress and turns in the receipts, they're giving him like 78 cents on the dollar for what he spent, because they're like, well, you should take some of this as an expense to you, because in the long run you'll make more with a free nation. But he's already thinking like, well, if you're not going to give me my full dollar back, if I spent $1, I'm only getting 78 cents on the dollar, then you're going to screw me in the end, because he's not from a prominent family. He's not from the great backgrounds that a lot of these people had already had. He's essentially kind of an upstart, somebody who made something of himself very early in life and married well, did stuff like that to advance his place. And he had the spirit to become a great man, but he had flaws in his character that would ultimately prevent that. And I really just wanted to share kind of like the end of this, because it's a really good book, and he kind of just goes through that, what it takes to have good character, and how like a lot of people looked at George Washington or looked at Benedict Arnold, and like kind of like one of the big things with George Washington is that, like, no matter how many times he was presented with ways that he could enrich himself or benefit himself, he always put the greater good at the highmost mark of something that he could achieve. He just had a long-term vision of who he was as a man and how he would be defined by these actions, and momentary gain, or a small Pyrrhic victory to then destroy his whole reputation, everything was like out of the question. He would never do it. He held himself above the fray. And there were times where he could come down on his enemies really hard, but he didn't. He tempered himself. He was very good at politics, basically at human politics, at dealing with like the room rather than just a big congressional apparatus that was being constructed in front of him as he's going. And it's why he is such a great man. Because I want to stay away from like deifying somebody, but by the end of reading this book, I mean, like, you see the numerous examples of George Washington continually not losing the plot. I mean, literally staying steadfast and being a good man despite a bunch of leeches and vipers all around him. And I'm talking about not just the British, I'm talking about the Congressional Congress, especially Horatio Gates. I learned about that little shit, trying to usurp his power by turning basically the Congress against him slowly, state by state, until eventually he would get control of all it. And all he wanted it was for glory, not for actually like leading men and being of good character. He just wanted glory. And you have to realize, like, that's just because it's in the 1700s, that's still what's happening now. A lot of people just want glory, but they don't want to do the hard work. And I really thought that this was a good book. I think this is a book that like everyone should read, because you can go down two paths. You can be a great man, or you can be somebody like Benedict Arnold that goes for the temporary gain. And I just wanted to end with this, that it's from somebody else's book, Lynn Morella, on ethical leadership, but I liked it and I wanted to put it in here. And it's basically, your thoughts become your words become your actions become your habits become your character becomes your destiny. Now, I'm not going to get into politics on like where we're at now in this country, but I can guarantee you that a lot of what I have read, a lot of people in power now are more Benedict Arnold than they are George Washington, and that's just a fact. When you think of temperance, you think of prudence and justice and all these things, that just a fortitude, who you're supposed to be in these moments of crisis. And look at who we have in leadership now, and it's like, nah, that's not. Come on. And even the one who came before him, these are lesser men. These are absolutely lesser men than what George Washington helped found in this country. So, you up? My dog just woke up. She was feeling that. So yeah, David R. Palmer, George Washington, and Benedict Arnold, A Tale of Two Patriots. I strongly recommend it. And that's my first book review. Get out there and try it. Thank you.